Hi, I just wanted to talk briefly about the syllabus and the class a little bit more because we didn't have time to fully go into that in class. Um, Make sure that you realize that we have a quiz due on the syllabus on Friday, and make sure that you have read through the syllabus because you are responsible for knowing that. Right. So the big picture of this class is that it's not about memorization, it's about learning how to think like a neuroscientist. So that means learning how to apply information that we talk about in class to sort of new things. I think a big part about being a scientist in general is learning how to ask questions and learning to realize when you don't know something. So we're really working on asking questions. Um, the second part then is learning how to figure out the answers. So sometimes I don't know the answer. So what do? I go and I look it up and I try and figure out. And hopefully I can help you figure out how to do that as well. Last, uh, there's a focus on sort of evaluating the information that you do find. Uh, can you read a news article about something neuroscience related and tell me, is this good or bad? And with that, we're going to spend some time analyzing graphs because I think this is an extremely important skill that we really just don't get better until we do more of. I sent out an email before class about the textbook. Just want to reiterate, you don't have to buy the textbook, completely optional. I give you two different choices that you can buy if you want. Feel free to buy older editions, especially of the Calais book if you're interested. Um, but again, there will be no assigned readings. I do think they are helpful personally. Students have varied from them either being useless to extremely helpful. And I don't know how to tell which type of student you'll be off the bat. Expect to have weekly assignments of some sort. You'll be turning something in. Um, be checking Schoology to make sure it'll be obvious there. In addition, I plan on having for each class a graph to read and for you to just make a quick sort of 1 to maybe 3 sentences at most statement about what you think that graph means. Late work is generally not accepted unless there's an excuse, right? If you know ahead of time you're going to miss class, you should let me know and we should figure out something ahead of time. If you don't know if it's due to illness or something, obviously we can figure something else out, and yes, those would be excused as well. The exams are entirely take home this semester because I think that's what allows you to not have to focus on the memorization and to think more deeply. Here's a couple examples of questions. This is basically you pretending to be sort of the doctor in the case, and you have a patient, they can't move their right leg, but they can feel sensation in their right leg. What's the most likely brain region that was injured? Um, if you dove into things a little bit, this not being able to move makes you think maybe motor cortex, and the fact that it's a right leg should tell you what specific part of it. Also, the fact that its sensation is not affected tells you a little bit something about what areas are not affected. The sensory cortex or somatosensory cortex and certain parts of the spinal cord would be unaffected as well. Um, the second question is just trying to get you to think about sort of what your brain is doing in normal everyday life. So here I'm talking about sort of what happens at night when my cat's hungry. I will give you a question very similar to this with some other story, um, and you'll have to be able to go through and say what each brain region I list is doing in this sort of mundane sequence of events, right? Um, and make you really start to think about what each part of the brain and specifically what parts are uh, acting in sort of everything you do. Participation, a little bit trickier, but I still expect everybody to participate. And I think if you're not participating, you're not going to get a lot out of this class. So I give you different opportunities. There'll be partner work, there'll be small group work, and there'll be sort of whole class discussions, right? And I would like to see everybody participate in each type of mechanism that you can. However, people naturally are more likely to participate in certain ones over others, and I understand that. I don't really keep track of this. There isn't like you need to have X number of comments for each class, but I do like to see just a sort of good quality participation. And quality is more important than quantity. So it's not just about saying something for the sake of saying something. It's about actually contributing meaningfully. And with that, I would say questions are worth more than answers, right? Um, they don't even have to be amazing questions. Just your ability to say, "I don't know this. Can you explain it to me?" A different way, that is extremely useful to me and to all your classmates, and especially to you. So make sure you're doing that. Uh, Answers are still great. I'm not putting down people who answer questions. I'm just trying to promote people to ask questions because that always makes for a better class. Um, it's pretty easy for me to remember who participated, so don't worry about it. Basically, what happens is that midterm, I'll give you a participation grade, and you'll have a sort of sense of how things are going. Am I participating at the level Dr. Henley wants me to or not? And you can take it from there. Well, how are you going to be able to communicate in this class? It's kind of a bigger question this semester. We'll use Zoom. Obviously, we've already used Zoom. As much as possible with Zoom, I'd like you to keep your camera on because this is easier for me to see how you're doing. If you're staring blankly out the window, and everybody is, I know I'm being extra boring. If you are sort of pounding your head against the desk, I know probably not going so well. Maybe we should back up just a little bit, right? When you're not talking, mute. And to get my sort of attention, or if you're trying to answer a question, make sure you can just go ahead and start talking. We should sort of get rid of the I know, I feel like it's almost a little bit of a Midwestern niceness where nobody wants to talk because they're afraid somebody else is going to talk and we can't see who's talking as well. Just go out there. If two people start talking at the same time, it's okay. We'll deal with that. Um, it's okay to use the raise hand button. I'll try and watch for that and call on you. You can also just sort of raise your hand in the sort of video, and I can look for that too. Also using chat to get my attention should work just as well. When we're in person, that's a little trickier because I can't be standing at the computer all the time watching chat, but I do intend to have one person, this will change each class, assigned as sort of a chat watcher who can get my attention for you. Everybody should have received an invite to Slack. This will not necessarily be required for class, but I think it's going to be extremely handy for you to contact me, but more so for you to contact each other. There's a lot of things that you can work on together, and Slack allows you to make group messenger, and you can work together and share documents very easily. It's also nice to have a messenger app that's sort of separate from your normal messenger, and you can say, this is my school messaging app, and it works better for school things. Like it's easier to send files around, and we'll have everybody as a class in one group, but there's other groups as well. And in general, if you look at that Slack, there's a sort of general and an off, I think it's called random channel that you can just post up to. If you just find some cool neuroscience thing, it'd be great if everybody just started sharing stuff like that for everyone. Right, Schoology is useful for certain types of communication. You can certainly contact me and hand in assignments that way. And then email is always a great backup as well. As far as there's a detailed course schedule at the end of the syllabus, but I always like to break it down into a couple things. The first half is sort of the meat and potatoes. What is the brain, the nervous system, action potential, synapses. The second half is sort of applying that to understand how does all this physical stuff in our head lead to behavior. Overall, I could see it also broken into 4 parts, and this is sort of the 4 exams. The first one being what is the stuff in the nervous system. The second being how do neurons transmit information. The third being how do we get groups of neurons that lead to more complex stuff. And the fourth being how does our brain change in different circumstances. That last one's a little tricky. That's mostly sort of how do hormones affect our brain and how do sort of different disease states affect our brain. Don't worry too much about the exact dates of the topics, though I am pretty good now at hitting those dates. But, I had people who are interested in talking about dreams, so I'll see where I can squeeze that in sort of later in the semester, and that's going to bump some things around. That's okay. The exam should stay where they are. How to do well? Come to the class prepared and participate actively. If you don't know something, you should give yourself a chance to sort of look it up. If you take a handful of minutes and you're just sort of banging your head on the wall, ask me, ask your peers, and make sure that you're actively trying to figure something out. Make sure that you're not spending time on memorizing. That's a big thing here is I don't want you to waste time doing that because I know anything you memorize is almost certainly gone that last day of class and you're never going to think about it. But if you can explain and understand things and apply things, that's great. Make sure you're asking questions both inside and outside of class. Don't work by yourself. Hopefully Slack is going to help with this semester. Normally, and I also will be pairing you up with people for different projects or small groups so that we sort of force interactions. Because I think hearing other people's sort of perspective on issues or how they approach a problem is extremely important. And particularly if you get stuck on something, like I said, just talking to somebody else can be very useful. And the point here at the end is that The exams, they're take-home exams, so they're typically, I'll send them out to everybody on a Wednesday or so, and then they'll be due on a Monday. But once those exams are out, you can't basically come ask me any question anymore, right? Like if you ask me a question that's basically what's the answer to question 4, I can't tell you that. I can maybe give you some sort of basic things or clarify a question, but I'm not just going to give the answer. But if you ask me, the day before the exam goes out, how does this work, or what would happen if this happened, of course I can answer those questions all the time. All right, so that's what I wanted to talk about briefly with the syllabus. If you have any questions, make sure you contact me through any of the many means available to you, and let's make sure we get that sorted out sooner rather than later. Read the syllabus, take the syllabus quiz by Friday. All right.